At 5:12 local time, somewhere in the Persian Gulf, the quiet inside the Command Information Center of a United States aircraft carrier suddenly changes. On the radar screen, a new surface contact appears. Then another, then 3 more. Within seconds, 5 fast-moving vessels begin sliding across the tactical display, coming in from the north at high speed. The radar operator leans closer to the screen. 5 surface contacts bearing 027. A short pause follows before the next update. Speed: 28 knots and increasing. That is not normal commercial movement. Cargo ships do not accelerate together. They do not close in on a carrier group in formation. And they definitely do not move like a coordinated line of steel across open water. Inside the command center, the contacts are marked, tracked, and analyzed almost instantly. Streams of information move across the consoles: heading, speed, signal activity, and movement pattern. A classification appears moments later: Iranian naval vessels. The distance reads 38 nautical miles and closing. Up on the bridge, everything still looks peaceful. The Persian Gulf lies flat and blue beneath the early morning sun. Sailors stand watch along the railings. Crew members move across the flight deck, preparing aircraft for routine operations. From the horizon, nothing appears unusual, but inside the ship's sensors, the story is already different. A calm voice breaks the silence on the bridge. 5 Iranian naval vessels approaching from the north. No one shouts. No one needs to. The captain steps closer to the tactical display near the helm. His eyes move across the data with controlled focus. Carrier groups follow one simple rule in moments like this: do not rush, do not react emotionally, do not give the other side the answer they are trying to provoke. The carrier holds its course, moving steadily through the water at 20 knots. 2 escort destroyers patrol the outer defensive ring, while a cruiser monitors the wider picture from several miles away. Every radar in the formation is now watching the same 5 ships. At 5:16, the first electronic signals begin appearing across the consoles. The Iranian vessels have activated their surface search radars. Low power, wide sweep. They are scanning the carrier group. The electronic warfare officer begins logging the emissions. Radar signature confirmed. Iranian naval pattern. Still, the carrier group does not answer. Not yet. The distance drops to 30 nautical miles, then 27. On the radar display, the 5 Iranian vessels maintain a tight line abreast formation, moving side by side as if each ship is part of the same blade pointed toward the American fleet. That formation alone is enough to change the atmosphere in the room. This is not random movement. This is pressure by design. At 5:18, the first radio message is sent across international maritime frequencies. Iranian naval vessels. This is a United States Navy carrier group operating in international waters. You are approaching at high speed. Alter course immediately. The channel remains silent. No reply comes back. The radar operator continues updating the track. Contacts accelerating. Now 31 knots. That speed is not typical for routine patrol movement. It means the Iranian vessels are pushing their engines harder, closing the distance faster with every passing minute. Inside the command center, the closest point of approach calculation begins updating in real time. Closest point of approach, 12 nautical miles. Time to closest point of approach, 14 minutes. On the bridge, the captain watches the numbers change. Then he gives his first order: maintain course. No change in speed, no change in direction. The message is deliberate. The carrier group will not be pushed off its path. At 5:21, something on the radar changes. The Iranian formation begins to spread. Instead of remaining in a straight line, the vessels start moving apart. One shifts slightly west, another drifts east. The pattern slowly opens into a wide arc. The tactical officer studies the movement carefully. They are spreading out. Another officer completes the thought. They are trying to apply pressure from multiple angles. The Iranian vessels are no longer simply closing the distance. They are taking positions. On the radar display, the arc continues to widen as all 5 ships adjust their headings, shaping the early outline of a loose semicircle around the carrier group. The distance now reads 21 nautical miles. Still closing. At 5:24, the electronic warfare console lights up again. A narrow radar beam passes across the carrier strike group. Different frequency, stronger signal. The operator looks up from the screen. Possible precision tracking radar sweep. The room becomes still. A signal like that does not always mean immediate action, but it carries a clear message. It suggests the situation is moving into a more serious phase. Up on the bridge, the captain does not hesitate. Set condition 3. Across the carrier and its escort ships, the order spreads within moments. Condition 3 means the key combat stations are fully staffed and ready. Defensive crews move into position. Radar operators focus their screens on the approaching vessels. On the deck of the nearest destroyer, the large 5-inch naval system slowly turns toward the horizon. Not enough to provoke, just enough to be noticed. The carrier continues forward, steady, controlled, unmoved. Inside the Command Information Center, the radar screen updates again. Closest point of approach, 9 nautical miles. Then something else appears. A new signal rises from the deck of one of the Iranian vessels. The radar operator zooms in on the contact. The track climbs quickly above the waterline. His voice cuts through the silence. Air contact just launched from one of the Iranian vessels. A pause follows. Then confirmation. Helicopter heading toward the carrier group. The helicopter rises above the Iranian ship, its rotor blades carving wide circles through the morning air. From the radar console inside the carrier's Command Information Center, the new contact is immediately marked and tracked. Altitude 200 feet, speed 80 knots, heading directly toward the carrier strike group. The operator tightens the tracking box around the aircraft. Air contact confirmed. Iranian naval helicopter. Up on the flight deck, the distant shape becomes visible against the pale horizon. At first, it is only a small dark point above the water, but its direction is clear. It is coming straight toward the carrier. Inside the Command Information Center, no one reacts emotionally. Every movement follows procedure, built through years of training and repeated until it becomes instinct. The tactical officer studies the screen. Helicopter range, 16 nautical miles. Another officer responds at once. Recommend airborne intercept. The captain gives a single nod. Launch the fighters. Within seconds, the command moves across the carrier. Flight deck, scramble 2. On the massive flight deck, yellow shirt directors begin moving with sharp urgency. Deck crews guide the aircraft with glowing batons as the first Super Hornet is brought into position. Steam rolls from the catapult track. Pilots settle into their cockpits while ground crews complete the final checks. Above the water, the Iranian helicopter continues closing. Inside the Command Information Center, the radar display shows the distance shrinking. 14 nautical miles. At the same time, the 5 Iranian vessels below continue their maneuver. Their formation has opened even wider now, the semicircle stretching across several miles of ocean. They are no longer just approaching, they are positioning. At 5:29, the first Super Hornet launches from the deck. The catapult releases with a heavy roar, sending the jet forward through a cloud of steam and motion. Seconds later, the second aircraft follows, climbing sharply above the carrier strike group. Within moments, both jets are moving toward the approaching helicopter. Altitude rising fast, speed passing 400 knots. From inside the Iranian helicopter, the approaching fighters would now be impossible to miss. But the helicopter does not turn away. It keeps coming. Inside the Command Information Center, a new alert flashes across the electronic warfare console. Surface radar emissions increasing. The Iranian vessels have intensified their radar activity. Multiple sensors are now sweeping across the American formation. The electronic warfare officer begins logging the frequencies. 5 ships scanning. Pattern consistent with precision tracking search. Not a full targeting confirmation, but close enough for everyone in the room to notice. The distance between the two groups keeps shrinking. 9 nautical miles. On radar, 2 of the Iranian vessels shift course again, moving closer to the carrier's projected path. Behind them, long white wakes stretch across the darker water, cutting sharp lines into the surface. One of the escort destroyers reports visual confirmation. Iranian vessels maneuvering with increased pressure. Above the water, the 2 American fighters now approach the helicopter from opposite angles. The lead pilot checks the distance. 3 miles, then 2. His voice stays calm over the radio. Iranian helicopter, you are approaching a United States carrier strike group. Alter course immediately. There is no response. Instead, the helicopter banks slightly and drops lower over the water. Its altitude falls to barely 100 feet above the waves. The move is deliberate. Inside the Command Information Center, the radar officer watches the change closely. Helicopter now operating at low altitude. That kind of movement can reduce visibility on radar, but it also sends a message. The helicopter is not backing away. The fighters hold position above it now, faster, higher, in full control of the airspace around it. They are not there to escalate. They are there to observe, contain, and make their presence impossible to ignore. Below them, the Iranian vessels keep advancing. 7 nautical miles, then 6. Inside the escort destroyer closest to the Iranian ships, the command center receives a new reading. A narrow beam of radar energy sweeps across the formation again, this time stronger. The electronic warfare officer's voice tightens slightly. Possible precision tracking spike from one Iranian vessel. The room goes quiet. A signal like that means the systems on board that vessel may now be calculating a much more focused solution. Still not in action, but it is another step closer to the edge. At 5:33, something else appears on the radar display. Small, fast. The operator zooms in. 4 tiny contacts detach from one of the Iranian ships and begin accelerating across the water. Speed climbing rapidly. 30 knots, then 40. Inside the Command Information Center, the tactical officer recognizes the pattern immediately. Multiple small surface craft deploying. On the radar screen, the new contacts spread out like arrows across the water. 4 Iranian fast boats are now moving toward the carrier strike group at high speed. Distance, 5 nautical miles, closing fast. Inside the command information center, the radar display fills with new movement. 4 small surface contacts, speed 40 knots, heading directly toward the carrier. The operator expands the tracking window. Fast surface craft confirmed. Out on the ocean, the boats are still barely visible. Thin shapes bouncing over the waves, leaving long white trails behind them. But on radar, there is no doubt. Iranian fast boats, designed to close distance quickly and create pressure at close range. Inside the carrier strike group, the procedures change immediately. The tactical officer speaks calmly, recommends surface response posture. The captain answers without hesitation. Execute. Across the formation, systems begin to move. One of the Ali Burke-class destroyers shifts slightly ahead of the carrier's path, placing itself between the incoming boats and the carrier. Its radar locks onto the small craft almost instantly. Inside the destroyer's command information center, the control system begins calculating range, speed, and movement pattern. Nothing has been released, but everything is now prepared. On the destroyer's forward deck, the large 5-inch naval gun begins to rotate slowly. Heavy steel moves with quiet precision. From the view of the Iranian boats racing over the water, the movement would be impossible to miss. A message without words. Above them, the 2 Super Hornets circle tightly, holding altitude while watching the situation unfold below. One pilot lowers his aircraft slightly, dipping closer to the water to get a direct look at the boats. The radio channel opens again. Iranian vessels approaching a United States carrier strike group reduce speed immediately. The message is repeated, first in English, then in Persian. No response. On radar, the boats continue closing. 4 nautical miles, then 3. Inside the destroyer's command information center, the closest point of approach keeps updating. Closest point of approach, 1 nautical mile. Too close. At that distance, even small boats become difficult to predict. The tactical officer studies their speed. They are not slowing. The destroyer's captain speaks in a steady voice. Prepare warning round. The order moves instantly through the ship. On the forward deck, the gun crew brings the 5-inch cannon into position. Coordinates are loaded into the control system. The aim point is open water directly in front of the approaching boats. Not the vessels themselves, just the sea ahead of them. At 5:36, the cannon fires. The blast rolls across the Persian Gulf like thunder. A single round moves low over the water. Seconds later, it strikes the sea several hundred meters ahead of the Iranian boats. A huge column of white water rises into the air. The effect is immediate. Inside the command information center, radar confirms a sudden change in movement. The boats hesitate. One shifts slightly to port. Another drifts to the right, but 2 of them keep moving forward. Distance now, 2 nautical miles. Above the scene, a new aircraft enters the formation. From the carrier's deck, a Seahawk helicopter lifts into the air, its rotors beating heavily against the warm Gulf air. Within seconds, it accelerates forward, flying low toward the incoming boats. The Seahawk drops to just 200 feet above the waterline, closing fast. Inside the cockpit, the sensor operator activates the helicopter's electro-optical system. The boats appear clearly on the monitor now. 4 gray hulls, crew members visible on deck, engines pushing hard across the waves. The Seahawk pilot banks sharply, placing the helicopter between the boats and the carrier. Then comes the warning. A narrow green beam of light moves across the surface of the lead boat. The helicopter's laser marker settles near the vessel's bridge windows. Non-harmful, but impossible to misunderstand. The radio transmission follows at once. Iranian fast craft, you are approaching a United States carrier strike group in an unsafe manner. Reduce speed and alter course immediately. The helicopter circles once, the green light briefly moving across the other boats. Inside the destroyer's command information center, radar confirms that the situation is still tense. 2 boats begin slowing, but the other 2 continue forward. Distance, 1.5 nautical miles. Then something new appears on the electronic warfare console. A sharp signal spike. The operator looks up instantly. Radar emission from one Iranian vessel increasing. Another officer checks the frequency. This time the tone is different. More focused, more precise. The electronic warfare officer speaks carefully. Possible precision tracking radar lock. Inside the command information center, the room falls silent. A confirmed precision tracking radar lock means the Iranian ship may now be preparing its onboard systems. Not an immediate release. Not yet. But close enough to change everything. Above the water, the Seahawk helicopter continues circling. The 2 remaining fast boats are now just over 1 mile from the escort destroyer. Behind them, one of the larger Iranian vessels slowly turns its bow toward the carrier strike group. Then something moves on its deck. A hatch opens along the center line of the ship. Inside the command information center, the radar operator narrows his eyes at the screen. Possible launcher activity on Iranian vessel. The captain looks toward the tactical display. For a moment, no one speaks. Then the electronic warfare officer says what everyone in the room is already thinking. Precision tracking radar confirmed. The moment those words are spoken, the atmosphere inside the command information center changes. Not louder, not chaotic, just sharper. Confirmed precision tracking radar, the officer repeats. On the tactical screen, a narrow beam of energy from the Iranian ship is now fixed toward the carrier strike group. That signal means one thing. The ship's computer is calculating a focused engagement solution. Inside the carrier, the captain gives the order in a low, steady voice. Set Condition 1. Across the entire strike group, the command spreads within seconds. Condition 1. Full readiness. Crews move into position. Radar operators lock their attention onto every Iranian vessel now within range. Control systems align automatically. No one acts, but every system is ready. Above the water, the Seahawk helicopter keeps circling low over the Iranian fast boats. The green laser marker still pulses across the lead vessel's bridge windows, impossible to ignore. Inside the helicopter cockpit, the pilot checks the distance marker. 1.2 nautical miles. Too close. The radio transmission goes out again. Iranian fast craft, you are approaching a United States carrier strike group in an unsafe manner. Alter course immediately. For a moment, nothing changes. The two leading boats continue pushing forward through the water. Behind them, the larger Iranian vessel keeps turning slowly toward the American formation. On its deck, the open hatch remains visible. Inside the escort destroyer, the command information center tracks every movement. The closest point of approach updates again, under 1 nautical mile. At that distance, reaction times shrink to seconds. Above them, the two Super Hornets shift position once more, dropping lower across the sky. Their engines roll overhead as they pass above the Iranian boats in a fast, controlled flyover. Not reckless, not impulsive, but impossible to miss. A reminder of the aircraft watching from above. Inside the Seahawk helicopter, the sensor operator zooms the camera tighter. The boats come into clearer view. Gray hulls, crew members gripping railings, engines pushing hard through the waves. Then something changes. The lead boat slows, not dramatically, just enough for the radar operator aboard the destroyer to notice. Speed dropping from 40 knots to 32. Seconds later, the second boat does the same. The Seahawk circles again, holding position. The green marker remains steady. Another radio call goes out. Reduce speed immediately. For several long seconds, the boats continue drifting forward through their own wake. Then the lead vessel turns slightly. Only a few degrees. Not enough to fully withdraw, but enough to show it is no longer pointing directly at the carrier strike group. Inside the destroyer's command information center, the radar officer calls it out. Lead craft altering heading. Another operator confirms it. Speed now 28 knots. The tension inside the room does not vanish, but it changes. Because the radar console is still showing something else. The Iranian vessel behind the boats continues transmitting its precision tracking beam. Locked, focused. Inside the electronic warfare station, the operator watches the frequency carefully. Then, without warning, the signal disappears. No fade, no gradual drop, just silence. The tracking beam shuts down. The operator checks the reading again. Radar lock lost. Out on the ocean surface, the change moves slowly through the Iranian formation. The two fast boats pull back on their throttles. The spray around their hulls begins to settle. They drift sideways across the waves instead of pushing straight ahead. Behind them, the larger Iranian vessel that had opened its launcher cover begins to turn away, gradually, carefully. The cover on its deck slides shut. Inside the carrier strike group, radar continues tracking every movement. On the bridge, the captain does not celebrate. He simply watches. At 5:41, the first Iranian vessel completes its turn away from the American formation. Then the second, then the third. The semicircle that had started to close around the carrier strike group slowly breaks apart. Distance begins increasing. 1 nautical mile, 2, 3. Above them, the Seahawk helicopter makes one final orbit around the slowing boats. The green marker disappears. The helicopter climbs slightly and banks back toward the carrier. Inside the command information center, the radar operator exhales quietly. The tactical officer keeps his eyes on the screen. Contacts withdrawing. For several moments, the carrier strike group holds its formation. Defensive systems still ready. Sensors still tracking. But the most dangerous part of the encounter is beginning to pass. 5 Iranian vessels that had closed in with heavy pressure only minutes earlier are now moving steadily away across the Persian Gulf. No direct exchange, no launch, no collision, only a tense encounter that came far too close to becoming something much larger. Inside the command information center, one officer quietly summarizes the moment. They push the line. The captain looks at the radar screen one last time before turning away. and they found it. For several minutes after the Iranian vessels begin moving away, the carrier strike group does not change course. Not a single turn. Not a single celebration. Inside the command information center, every radar console remains fixed on the withdrawing contacts. Distance increases slowly. 3 nautical miles. 4. 5. The 5 Iranian vessels that had been closing in moments earlier now drift apart across the horizon, their formation loosening as they move back toward open water. Above them, the 2 Super Hornets continue circling at altitude, engines humming steadily in the warm Gulf air. Their radar systems track the departing ships, while the Seahawk helicopter returns toward the carrier, climbing to 500 feet. Inside the helicopter cockpit, the sensor operator saves the final footage. Every movement of the Iranian vessels, every turn, every radar sweep, timestamped, geolocated, recorded. Back aboard the carrier, the electronic warfare officer studies the captured signals, scrolling across his console. What happened on the surface lasted less than 30 minutes. But the information collected during that time may be worth far more than the encounter itself. Every radar frequency used by the Iranian vessels is now recorded. Every signal pattern from their sensors has been captured. And most importantly, the brief precision tracking radar lock that appeared across the carrier group minutes earlier has been preserved in full detail. To an intelligence officer, a signal like that is a fingerprint. It can reveal the type of tracking system a vessel uses, its operating range, its signal behavior, and even the rhythm of the software guiding it. Information like that can make a future encounter far more predictable. Inside the Command Information Center, the tactical officer summarizes the report in a low voice. Electronic signatures confirmed on all 5 vessels. The data moves instantly through the carrier's network, reaching analysts aboard the cruiser escort and then beyond the strike group itself. High above the Gulf, satellites continue watching the Iranian vessels as they withdraw toward the coastline. On the bridge, the captain finally gives his next order. Maintain course. The carrier does not follow, does not escalate. It simply continues forward, cutting through the water as a long white wake stretches behind its hull. The strike group resumes its patrol route. Within the hour, flight operations begin again. On the deck, yellow shirt directors guide another Super Hornet toward the catapult. Steam rolls across the flight deck as the aircraft launches into the sky, returning the carrier to its normal rhythm. From miles away, nothing about the scene would suggest how close the situation had come to a serious escalation. But inside the systems of the strike group, the encounter is already being studied. Every radar pulse replayed, every course change reviewed, every movement placed into the record. Because moments like this are never truly random. Iranian naval activity in the Gulf often relies on pressure tactics. Fast boats, close approaches, sharp radar sweeps, all designed to test how a larger fleet responds. Sometimes the goal is political signaling. Sometimes it is information gathering. And sometimes it is simply a reminder that the Persian Gulf remains one of the most closely watched waterways on Earth. But this time, the test worked both ways. The Iranian vessels approached a United States carrier strike group expecting to show presence. Instead, they revealed something just as important. Their radar behavior, their reaction timing, their movement patterns, their playbook. Information that will now remain inside the databases of the United States Navy. Inside the Command Information Center, the radar screen returns to its quieter rhythm. Distant shipping lanes, scattered civilian vessels, open water. The 5 Iranian contacts are now more than 20 nautical miles away, still visible. But no longer close enough to dominate the screen. The tactical officer looks over the final report. No exchange, no damage. All systems normal. The captain nods once, then turns back toward the horizon. Encounters like this rarely make headlines. There are no dramatic images, no sudden fire in the sky, no moment that the world immediately sees. Just steel ships maneuvering across open water while hundreds of sensors quietly record every movement. But in modern naval operations, these quiet moments often matter most, because somewhere across these same waters there will be another encounter. And when it comes, both sides will remember exactly how close this one came to crossing the line.